We're moving to capital.
Okay.
Any other questions?
And no one's logged in, so I'm assuming there's no further questions. Okay. All right. So we have David Joy, General Manager of Corporate Services, doing the capital
Unless
budget.
Shirley wants to.
She's not jumping up and running to you.
All right, capital. Just to let you know, what's being presented here for the next 5 years is $250 million. $250 million? No.
No.
I'll simplify, 256 million in capital projects planned. And how do we pay for that? Peace River Agreement money, on average 24.5 million. We've done an estimate of that. It may be lower, it may be higher, depending on the formula that the province uses. We have reserves currently for capital only of 84 million, 84.2 million. I changed the number from 70.7. Long-term borrowing, 37.5 million of outstanding debentures. The current, what we have available to us is 76 million that we could go into debt for, which we wouldn't want to do necessarily. And the debt servicing capacity that we have available to us is 14 million if we wanted to go into debenture to pay for something.
And that's according to the provincial legislation.
Right.
Yep.
We do receive federal gas tax money, almost 800,000 a year. And if we had some one-time expenses, we could, or if something came up where we could purchase additional land beyond what we have budgeted for, we could pull it out of operating surplus, current year surplus. And we have developer contributions, and sometimes the PRD chips in. So in capital reserves, hope I have this right. It's going off screen a little bit. Here's all the capital reserves we have available to us. I separate out the utilities reserves because they're self-contained. And we have development cost charges. Our history, I thought I'd throw out the history here of the last 7 years. And we try our best to, we think we can get projects done. In 2018, we budgeted for 59 million, and so far what we've seen is about 37.1 million of actual costs. Over the last 2 years, our carry forward, our average surplus, if you will, or amount that can be carried forward on average was about 16 million. And the previous years, on average, we could spend probably no more than 30 million a year. And a lot of that is due, of course, to the short construction season, RFPs going out a little later than perhaps we would have preferred. Something we'll look at when we go into our financial framework discussions. Probably we'll be looking at trying to do a 4-year capital budget, so that we get RFPs out late in the fall or early in the winter, something like that.
So I think Council's very aware of this, but if you look at 2014, 2015, those are the years that we adopted our capital budget prior to the end of the previous, so in this case, prior to December of 31st of the year. You can see the huge difference when the capital budget's approved early. We're able to get out, do our RFPs, do our contract awarding, and we hit the ground running. In 16, 17, we waited to the assessments, and we waited till probably March, April of that year to approve our capital budget, or at least in about March. And you can see that puts us behind the 8 ball to get those projects in the works and get it with our short construction season. So that's not the entire explanation of the carry forwards and what we're not able to accomplish, but it's a significant portion. So the earlier we have the capital budget approved, the better we are at delivering on that capital project and completing it.
Okay. And our PRA, I won't spend much time on this, but we do share $50 million of Peace River Agreement money with 7 other communities in the region. The distribution of that pot of money is dependent upon the assessed value of the industrial tax base and equalized per capita data in the region. Last year, we received $23.9 million. This year, we anticipate $24.5 million. If we're short of that, we have been averaging being under budget or having to carrying over $17 million. So I'm not too concerned that we'd have to drop off. We wouldn't have to drop off any capital projects. The criteria we use, we got away from it a little bit this year when we assess the capital projects, but generally the criteria or this is very similar to, somewhat similar to staffing criteria, but this more or less explains what it's all about. And we did rely on Victor's expertise with the C1 projects. And I think when we get into asset management and developing that process, it will have an effect on how we select our projects. It'll be a lot more scientific or a lot more supporting documentation based off condition and impact and expected years of future service on the assets we have. Hang on a moment. There we go. So 5 years, so this is the way it lays out, and this is how we pay for these projects. A big one coming up, obviously, is the RCMP building, and it'll be fine if it's a fully integrated building with the provincial side and the municipal side. It'll be financed with about 60% PRA money, and 40% will go get a debenture issued. And the lease payments that we charge to the RCMP will match the debt servicing obligations of that of the debenture. We still have to go to a referendum, but hopefully explaining to the public that the provincial portion is not will not affect the tax rates. And in 2022-23, some thought has been given to a multi-recreational facility. That's affecting the numbers that you see here. And just bear with me a second. So for 2019, this is how it's funded. Again, we talk about how thankful we are for the Peace River Agreement money, because it really funds 74% of the projects that we're planning. And then go from there. Let's see. So C1, it spans across probably all 4 quadrants of the city, and I've listed them, and I've given you all the detailed descriptions of the projects. But you know, the largest one, of course, is the 100th Street 4-laning, and then the Totland Road extension. And how they're being paid for, again, is 73% of them are paid for by PRA money, and it really helps beautify our city and keep things in good running order. And some more, and I was sorting these so I can get them all in, but going into 2020, you can see the projects there, Downtown Action Plan, continuing out through to 2023. And again, more C1 projects. I think I'll look. C2 facilities, where am I going here? There. Centennial Park, major renovations, 5.3 million. The new RCMP building, 2.8 million. There won't be too much shovels in the ground, but we'll do as much as we can as soon as we get the RFPs out. Festival Frostival at 1.9 million, and the Fire Training Center at 1.5, and the rest of the projects. As you can see, the RCMP building is an expensive building. Again, it'll be partly paid for. 60% of it will come from reserves, again, which have come from the Peace River Agreement money, and a debenture. And halfway down, a little further than halfway down, you see the new recreation facility. Again, that would have to go to referendum. So it's out there as part of the plan. But it's dependent on approval by the general public. Again, a listing of the C2 projects for 2019, most of which is paid for, almost 93.5% is paid for with PRA money. And a 5-year outlook of all the facilities that are, and buildings and parks that are planned. For utilities, these are the projects, the sewage lift station upgrades. If I went too far, I was clicking. Hang on, sorry.
What happened to 4?
My apologies. There we go. The sewage lift station upgrades, again, this is all paid for within most of it, half of it from the reserves. And a conditional federal grant, again, that's dependent, doing this project is dependent on whether we get that grant. Which project is that, Victor, that we have? Is it the sewage lift station itself?
So we have a grant application out for the sewage lift station, and we, for the resource recovery facility, we, of course, received a $5 million grant for that, and we're getting close to, or we will be completing that this coming year.
Now, getting into C4, we have the fire truck, which we expect to receive in June, July, I believe. Daryl, is it June, July, August?
Yeah.
Fred?
June it should be.
Okay. We have a list of projects for IT, both in software and in infrastructure itself. I'm trying to think here, what else? Does the vacuum truck and a number of smaller pieces of equipment. And going out, again, and the 5-year plan for the equipment. C5 studies. So the C5 studies we've already discussed in the operating budget. I won't belabor it here. And the 5-year plan for that. And that's basically the capital budget.
Okay.
Oops, sorry.
Thank you for that. So the discussions that we've been having with the province is that the building, if it is a post-attachment building, which we're hearing rumblings that they're in favor of that. When we get it in writing, we'll let you know. It's easier for us and them if we borrow the money for their portion and then make that part of their lease agreement. And I believe it's noted in there under C2 somewhere.
Yeah.
And so that's what we're looking at doing. So that would be similar to an LAS where we would take the cost of borrowing and put it onto their lease. And otherwise, if we took all of our Peace River Agreement money and did the RCMP building outright, our monies would be locked in and they wouldn't pay for that. So this is the process that we're going to take a look at doing, and we would be using an alternative approval process for that.
And it still frees up our PRA money for
Yeah.
other uses.
Yeah. So the Festival Frostable Plaza, that's 1.870, and ours was, what we put away for that was 1.4-ish, was it? I think it was. So that's not bad, actually. Pleased with that. So the high lift pump, I just love that thing. Is this one gonna be more energy efficient? I know. It's our biggest cost item for electricity.
It is our biggest cost. So the high lift pumps, retrofits and upgrades we put in, they're an expensive motor. We would get the most efficient that we can at the time to match the equipment we have. So,
To match the equipment that we have.
well, there'll be a lot of other work happening there in the near future based on the long-term water supply plan, so.
Gotcha. Okay. That's it. I only made those 3 notes. And no one is logged in here to ask questions, except for Zabinski. Here we go.
Thank you, Your
Counselor
Worship.
Zabinski.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just on facilities, C2, we're gonna budget for the new RCMP building 2.8. That $185,000 for RCMP upgrades, is that just, every year do we budget 185,000? Is that just wear and tear while we're building this?
There's a
Like,
requirement for fentanyl room and
Plus controlled substance.
controlled substance. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we do recognize that as we move towards a new building, there's still a need to maintain and repair and upgrade the existing one. We're trying to ensure that we invest prudently in the existing building. Because once we move into the new detachment, it's really then any improvements we make to the existing RCMP building are very specific to RCMP, and it wouldn't be of any value or use to the next tenant coming in or the next user group. So it's a balancing act. Some of it's legislative and required under a contract with the federal government. Some of it's just that the building is aging and we're trying to keep it limping along for another 20 more years in some capacity or other. So that's the conversation we always have around the existing RCMP detachment is what's good value for our money as far as our investment in the building.
And keeping the old RCMP building has a value to us also for possibly storage, file retention, and you know, maybe bringing planning and development over. You never know, or other. If we keep, you know, if we do increase staff, it could be you know, offices over there too. So.
We'll discuss that. While I go down the pecking order, we just did a major increase, did lots of money to the curling rink, and now we're doing a remediation of $700,000. What are we looking at doing to the curling rink?
Yeah, I'll defer to Robin here as far as the facilities and the upgrades to the building.
So we're doing, we're following the IRC facility audit that was done in 2015. And it had a list of projects over a number of years. So I think Moira just pulled out what we're doing on a piece of paper. So I don't
So
think anything wrong.
I
So
can
I'll
answer
let
this so
her
that
fill it in.
Bill can hear it. So the curling rink, last year we did lighting. So in 2018, we did lighting. And in this year, we're going to be looking at the concrete masonry walls, stucco and cladding, exterior doors and sealants. And the long-term facilities audit outlines also several other areas in that building and other buildings that we audited where we need to be addressing long-term maintenance so that we get the maximum usable life out of the building.
So in response to that, your long-term facility maintenance plan identified that we were not reinvesting in our facilities and had not been over a number of years, to the point that we've got a number of facilities that were critical infrastructure improvements were required in these facilities. That's not uncommon to a lot of communities. They build facilities and then they don't put money away to basically upgrade and maintain them over the life of the building. So as soon as we got the assessment, your first couple years and budgets after that assessment, you address things into what we call the 0 to 1 year, which is basically really critical infrastructure that needed to be done in those buildings. We've now moved to the 2 to 5 year range of infrastructure improvements in all our building. That plan informs your budget, and you will see funding expended on your existing facility probably every year going forward. There's just probably at no point will you not be spending money on one of your facilities. It's just the nature of it. But the curling club definitely, as you can see, we're going to be spending $2.4 million on the curling club in the next couple of years on further upgrades. If you looked historically of what we spent on the curling club, just as one of our buildings, we spent that probably easily in the last 5 years between elevators and upgrades, and we'll still need quite a ways to go.
I think we did a coolant or
Yeah, we
something.
just put a new, if memory serves me correct, we just did a new refrigeration unit into that
Yeah.
sucker as well, right?
Yeah. It's ongoing.
Okay, well, I won't nickel and dime the list. There's a whole bunch of them. Maybe I'll take it off topic and offline and ask about them.
This isn't the last time we'll be seeing it.
I know. Okay, thank you, Your Worship.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Dave.
Also, the information provided to you on this
it in
larger
there?
spreadsheet
These are the
in
projects.
really big print, gives more descriptions on what each line item is, right? So if you refer to it, it'll give you a bit more information. If you require additional information, we can certainly provide that as well.
Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Stewart.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just 3 items to touch on for myself. The trail development, I see that we're going to have an assessment done on the slide. I'm familiar that some of the trails, at least one, is cut off back there. This assessment will then, I'm assuming, provide information for further funding in future years of how to reclaim those trails and make use of them.
Are you talking about the slope stability study?
No, that.
No, what is this? Item 62 on Development 2, trail development. It's regarding the Fish Creek trails.
Oh, you're there, okay.
So currently, we've had an assessment done on those trails. That assessment report will be coming to council. And our plan on upgrades isn't aligned with what we found in doing the assessment on the trail. To reclaim the area that the slide occurred in is almost impossible. And so the question is, and I know Ray and Robin have been looking at this, if we can't reclaim the slide area, can we expand the trail system along Fish Creek into less hazardous area to get the same experience that we had before, but in areas that's easier to maintain? And so this trail development is really to recognize that slide area
Is done.
is,
Yeah.
it's virtually impossible to reclaim with any assurance that you'd still be having it in usable form in 5 to 10 years' time. So that's the plan that definitely staff have come up with. We've even talked about the potential of even at some point having a bridge across the creek and then developing on the other side of Fish Creek as well.
Okay.
So that's the assessment that was done this year, and then
And a report will be coming to us at that point.
Through the worship to Councillor Stewart, yes. The first cow that was available to you in the new year is in February.
Okay.
So the report will be coming to you as a council. Similar presentation will be done, and then looking for some direction. There'll be options. It's a 5-year plan. Lays out what's there. It's all to do with Fish Creek.
Perfect. Thank you. The next question, and I only heard about this change recently, was our Sararis Park upgrades have taken a priority over the Kin Park development. And I'm just wondering, our Sararis Park is one of our newest parks, and it's well used. And so is Kin Park, but Kin Park has damaged fences and damaged tennis courts and motocross track that is not used. I'm just wondering why this switch has taken place, that it's become a priority over top of the other park as far as planning.
There we go. General Manager of Community Services.
Thank you, Your Worship. What we'd like to be able to do is two things in 2019. We'd like to have a look at Sararis Park because there's a critical need for us to address the substrate and the composition of the soccer fields and the drainage there. And we have a partnership opportunity with some user groups to be able to address that issue. So before we can move on that partnership opportunity, we need to do the planning. As well, in 2019, we would like to do the planning for Kin Park and perhaps a site plan, not a master plan, site plan for Toboggan Hill Park as well, which means that we would have shelf-ready park plans ready to execute in an iterative way so that we can address the critical needs in certain parks as required and prioritize them. So we're not forgetting Kin Park. What we're doing is we're trying to prioritize an opportunity.
I can understand that. I'm just looking at, we're going to spend, or the proposed spend of, look at the right one, $100,000 this year to replace backstops and such within Kin Park. And my concern is like that road, it is not a road. And so the whole plan, if we're going to replace backstops, we're going to replace fencing, that kind of thing, and then we're going to replace it again.
So we're going to work with Development Services, Integrated Services, to determine what we need to do about the road and treat that as a separate issue from replacing backstops and fences. Because we need to understand what the road requirements are first.
Okay.
Yeah, I was a little confused when Sararis took precedence over Kin Park too, because that back alley, trail, lane that everyone drives on, including transit,
It's not safe.
It is not safe.
Yeah.
And we've been looking at that for years, and I thought Kin Park was had precedence over Sararis.
So I think that we can prioritize the issue of addressing the road, certainly. But a master park plan is not just about relocating a thoroughfare.
Yeah, the problem is that relocating that road is going to require a redesign of the whole park.
Yes. And we'll start that design work this year.
So we're doing the whole redesign, we're doing
We're going to start the planning. So part of this conversation was to determine what the priority needs to be. So if council is adamant that Kin Park takes priority over Sararis Park, then we'll make that amendment. Our proposal to you is that we address the partnership opportunity at Sararis Park and find out how we can prioritize that, as well as have a look at what's required to do the full master plan for Kin Park, so that we know what we're looking at.
the partnership opportunities with
the user groups who are using Sararis Park to help replace the materials in the soccer pitches.
So if we do all of that and replace the soccer pitches and everything, so that takes us out to 2020, we've got 2021, and then we're looking at a new recreational facility which could encompass soccer pitches the following year.
In indoor soccer pitches.
I assure you, they're gonna wanna play indoor more than they're gonna wanna play outdoor in our climate. I just,
Spend good money after that.
I'd like to revisit that, and I'd like to understand how Sararis bumped up and over Kin Park, simply because of that road and the work that's needed over there. So we can do that, we can take that offline if we need to, or bring it forward in another capital presentation, because this isn't the first time we're gonna see, or the last time we'll see this either. All right,
Thank you.
thank you. Anything else on this?
No, your worship.
Okay. All right. Well, we have 15 minutes that we're booked for snow removal. And we have, for that, Victor Shoplin, General Manager of Integrated Services, and Jeremy Garner, Director of Public Works and Utilities.